sign back in, but we just want to welcome everybody. We know that in the midst of everything else going on, oh man, now I got to go to a lead teacher collaborative. We do hope that you'll find value in this affinity group session. It's not a sit and get, this is not a webinar. So an affinity group is really designed to be a chance to dig into some learning together, really be a learning community, which is what we're missing because of COVID. If it hadn't been for COVID-19 happening, we would have met in person already a couple times as lead teachers as a part of Rural Life. So this is our chance just to get to know each other and to dig in around some very timely topics, such as engagement. All right, so Catherine was with us. She must be having some, just like the rest of us at times, some internet connectivity issues. She's one of our Rural Life coaches. I'm Bethany. I'm the Director of Professional Learning for the Rural Life Grant, and we're excited to be with you this afternoon. All right, we would like for you to introduce yourself in the chat and add a couple other things if you don't mind. What you see here is if you'll add your name and your school, your role. We have some teachers, I think we have some administrators, some coaches, and your grade that you teach. Maybe it's multiple grades, but then also put 1 to 3 words or phrases that you associate with the concept of student engagement. So we'll let you kind of add that as you can. And we may let you multitask just a bit. So as you're doing that, I'm going to keep us rolling through some just introductory stuff, nothing too heavy. So just name, school, role, grade or grades, and then 1 to 3 words or phrases that you associate with the concept of student engagement. All right, most of us are probably more familiar with Zoom than we ever dreamed we would be. But we are going to use Zoom today. We're going to use that mic to just mute and unmute as we share out, and there'll be lots of opportunities to share out. So we hope you jump in and engage in that way with us. And Catherine says she's getting back on. Your video, like I said, we'd love to see your face. We also know things happen, so feel free to be on camera, off camera. I know when I'm sometimes doing some personal thinking, I'll turn my camera off, you know, while I'm just kind of thinking, and then I'll turn it back on. So feel free to do whatever works for you. And then as you're doing right now, we'll use that chat feature to just share ideas and some other neat little tips and tricks as we go. So I see lots of thoughts coming in about student engagement. We see active participation. Let's see. Better learning. So we think maybe that's a result of engagement, comprehension, mastery, rigor. We want to be active again. Love it. Let's see, relationships. Oh, I love that. We got rigor again. Active, we're on task, we're focused. Love it. And looks like we've got lots of ELA teachers in the mix. And as a reminder, you're just a subset of our Rural Life lead teacher group. There's 3 other sessions just like this one going on right now. We're excited to have you with us this afternoon. So this learning space is our learning space, and not to be too hokey about it, but we want you to feel comfortable, right, to participate this afternoon. We know it can be awkward, you know, but we can be awkward together, not a big deal. Many opportunities for sharing and discussion, as I mentioned earlier. Please share your voice. Man, all of us bring such rich knowledge and experience to this discussion, and that's really what's at the heart of an affinity group session, is us sharing our experiences and our knowledge with each other. And you know, we know it's 3:36, but hopefully we'll have a little bit of fun together this afternoon. Okay, so the Lead Teacher Collaborative, remember we introduced this back in November when we met as a whole big group, all the lead teachers from the 31 schools who are in this phase of our grant. We had 36 schools the last 2 years, and now we have a new set, and you're a part of this second phase of Rural Life. But our collaborative is just going to give us a chance to build some community amongst ourselves as Rural Life schools, reflect on and share out about our Rural Life work. This is where we want to hear from you, each other, what's working for you, what's not. Sometimes that's just as important to hear. And then also engage in professional learning centered around some key topics. So we know for Rural Life, we're bringing together research and best practice from both the literacy world and the personalized learning world. We'll dig into these topics much more in depth over the course of the remainder of our time in the grant. But today we're going to talk a little bit about engagement, which we know impacts both literacy, and we know that personalized learning can also increase engagement. So we are excited to dig in with you. All right, at this point, we've got a couple people coming in to join us. I think Catherine's able to join us too. And we'll keep this baby moving right along. Hi there, everybody. If you're just joining us, sorry, I started chatting and forgot about the waiting room. I hope you weren't waiting too long. All right, so we are here. We were in November. Now we're at January and February. This session and our next session on engagement. This is a two-part affinity group. So when you signed up for both. And so as we move forward, let somebody else in there. Our two-session journey is going to include lots of things. Catherine, you want to pick it up here and tell them a little bit about where we're going over the next two sessions?
Okay, guys, I'm sorry.
No worries.
You sweat under the armpits when you're talking, you lose a connection. And I yelled at my husband, turn off the TVs.
Need bandwidth, yeah.
So anyway, this is session one of two sessions. And again, the topic is engagement. And I don't know how much you heard of the introduction, but we're hoping that this is both for brick and mortar and for some virtual. You know, Bethany and I are talking about this, but we also know, and we have between us years of of classroom experience, but we're also hoping that we can see your faces and hear your voices and join in with us, okay? What slide? Okay, and
our two-session journey. You see where we are on the slide?
Yes, but I need to see the whole slide there.
That'll work.
Okay, so what we want to do with this session is expand the definition of engagement. You know, we think we know what engagement is, but every one of you, and especially Christy, several of you, we've talked a lot about what a problem it is for student engagement. You know, sometimes even dealing with adults, engagement is an issue. But the kids, it is really a struggle. We need to reflect on what we're doing. Are we engaged in the process? We need to analyze how we're teaching, how we expect the students to learn. We need to look for those experiences that are something that's maybe getting in the way of keeping students learn. And then finally, we need to share our own success and challenges with student engagement. I just had one, and I have to peel off about half my clothes because I'm hot, which is nothing but blood pressure. So expand, reflect, analyze, and share. Those are our words today.
Exactly. So for our agenda or road trip, we kind of decided to go on this kind of theme of a journey, engagement or bust, right? The road to get us there. We know it's not easy, but we're going to make a few stops on this journey this afternoon, like Catherine said, to explore this concept of engagement, to reflect on our personal practices, and then really consider potential ways to increase engagement in our classrooms. So our objectives for this specific affinity group, I won't read all of this word for word to you, but like I said, we're going to explore multiple types of engagement, how they work together to ensure that students are responsible for doing the heavy lifting or thinking in the classroom. Talk about what it looks like and sounds like for these types of engagement to be in action. Again, think about our role as the teacher in defining and offering up opportunities and really supporting increased student engagement. And then, hey, let's leave the session with some additional resources. And that's really where you all sharing your experiences with each other, teacher to teacher, is so valuable. So stop one, you'll see this little set of binoculars as we head on this journey. Is where we're going to explore this concept of engagement. We're going to define it, start to expand our definition, and most importantly, hear from students about what they say most engages them. All right, at this point, I want to stop just a second. In terms of materials, Catherine, if you get a chance, let's drop the link to the materials in the chat. It was on our first slide. We don't need anything for the next few minutes, but that way you'll have it when we get there. And also, either Catherine and I will be dropping other materials throughout the session in the chat, so keep an eye on the chat. Sometimes we'll interact in the chat. Sometimes we'll ask you just to share out, so I just unmute and share in that way. And then sometimes you'll just personally reflect. It won't be about sharing with the group. You might just write something on a piece of paper for yourself, something of that nature. So just know that we're going to be kind of in and out of those different types of tools and resources together. So to kick us off here, I don't know if you're familiar with the Association for Middle Level Education. Can you give me a thumbs up if you know about AMLE? It's one of our kind of flagship middle level education organizations. So you can become a member, or they have lots of resources on their website for free. But you know, as we've kicked off with a lot of this virtual learning, they have offered up some new perspectives, some research, new perspectives on engagement. And we know that researchers who study engagement, motivation, investment in the learning process talk about three types of student engagement. One would be kind of what I think we probably initially think of, and some of you mentioned this in the chat when you were sharing your 1 to 3 words or phrases, behavioral engagement, right? This would be our conduct. Again, this could be in person or this could be virtually. It's whether or not we're on task, right? And we sometimes refer to this as compliant participation, right? Students do what they're asked to do, right? You ask them to sit down, they sit down. You ask them to pick up their pencil, they pick it up, right? So a lot of that kind of fill out the worksheet, they fill it out, right? Copy the notes, talk to their partner, they do the things that they're asked to do. Working in tandem with behavioral engagement is emotional engagement, right? And here's what we're seeking, this tied to student attitudes, their interests, their values. Here's where we see culture, school culture and classroom culture come into play, because here we're talking about students' positive and negative reactions to teachers, classmates, academics as a whole, their school, that school environment. And then lastly, we have cognitive engagement. And this is really kind of our ultimate goal, right? We know that with cognitive engagement, we're talking about an investment in the learning process, a willingness to kind of put forth some effort and dig into and understand some complex ideas, you know, kind of wrestle with difficult skills. Here's where we see the work, no matter what subject we teach, of the standards, right? That kind of grade level, kind of productive struggle. And really when we're here at cognitive engagement, we know that these types of engagement really build on each other, they support each other. And I think it's important as we talk about that to take just a quick time out and a note when we think about students investing in the learning process that truly, yeah, students have to do their part, right? They got to show up. But what I think is extremely encouraging in the research is that even in the toughest places, right? We're talking about schools where students face the most adverse conditions, right? Traumas, we're talking about maybe safety issues. We're talking about maybe, you know, socioeconomic factors, all those things, home life, right? The stresses that they bring from home or lack of support from home. That even in those places that face those toughest conditions, that when culture is in play and when teachers are designing lessons that really offer up authentic opportunities for learning, students can and do excel. Again, even when we've got students who are multiple grade levels behind, they can and do excel with really rigorous grade level work when we're offering up those opportunities for true engagement and ownership. So let's hear from those students, right? And I'll pass it over to Catherine as she talks to us about a great resource, Just Ask Us.
Okay, be ready, Bethany. I just got an internet connection is unstable.
Okay.
So just be ready. So anyway, Bethany gave you a great overview of the three things that have popped up in the study. This is a book that we're using, Just Ask Us, okay? And it's AMLE publication, which is Association for Middle Level. And, you know, a little plug here, they for the last year since the pandemic, their conferences have been virtual, but their next conference is one that we could all go to is in November. And I have a feeling it'll probably still be virtual. It's in Louisville. And so talk to your coach about what those possibilities are, because sometimes Niswonger helps us get to some of these, and this is a fabulous organization. So anyway, let's look at the first behavioral. That's kind of the bottom level. Okay, you know this about let us move around. This is what students said. What is it that will help you learn? And maybe you've asked your students this question. What can I do to reach you? I know that we've all sat down with those problems and said, you know, what's the problem here? But the kids said, let us move around. We know kinesthetic learning helps students learn. We know that it helps adults. We think about Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. We know that there are some students that need to move around more than others. Activity increases the blood flow and oxygen to the brain, which helps students learn. And I would say that students of any age. Give us choices. Why is it that kids would go into a Barnes and Noble or a store than the school library? Well, and I've seen some really fabulous school libraries, so I can't say that's across the board, but it's because they have choices. And it makes school more appealing. It makes a book out of Barnes and Noble is more appealing than a book out of the library. And that's because they've had choices they could choose. If you give students choices, it increases the chance that the student will choose something and will complete it, will go to that next level. It's going to be something that interests them. They're going to follow through. Even if you give students choices in homework, you're helping yourself increase the percentages that you're going to get something back for them if they've had some kind of choice or voice in homework. Now, you know, we got to be careful about that because they will say no homework. No, that's not part of the deal, but you can give them choices. And this is also a huge piece, and this is a big plug for our grant, is personalizing and giving students choices is a powerful, powerful tool. Mix things up. Are you killing your students with kill and drill worksheets? I mean, are we? Mix it up with them. What do they want? Let them tell you what they want. You know, you have the objectives and you have the tools. Let them choose. Can't say enough about that. Just, you know, think about how you learn. If you will think back about you as a student and even you as an adult, then you will realize, you know, that these students are the same way. And honestly, I've told some of the other coaches, I have been on some Zoom calls with teachers and I'm thinking, what is the appeal to get the students to come watch this, you know? And then I've seen other teachers just let it all, just have a fabulous time. And, you know, so you've got some choices there, but think about the picture they're seeing, what they're seeing of you, okay? I'm sure some students would have totally enjoyed the fact that I just had a major connection meltdown and came on and it happened. And so we'd have a laugh about it and go on. We've seen some really interesting things happen with that. And hopefully in our sessions, we can talk some very specific strategies. The emotional piece, let us work together. You become the learner with them. I know that all of you would rather have administrators and colleagues that are facilitators, not people. It's human nature. We want to work together. Connect what we learn to the real world. Hey, does this sound like some of the evaluation tool strategies that we're supposed to cover? If you can tell kids why something is important, or if you're teaching that geometry, bring in a welder or a construction guy. You know, you've got a lot of kids sitting there. Why do I need to learn this? Well, you know, they're going to need it. So connect to the real world. Our students, and they don't realize it yet, just as we didn't realize it, they're living in historical times. They are living through more history than many of us ever did. And so we need to connect this learning to what their world is. in a good and positive way. We're not asking you to give your belief value and values to them, but allow them to understand why their learning is important. And then show us that you're human too. Are you excited about what you teach? Does it really excite you? Do you show enthusiasm when the students succeed? Do you celebrate? Do you admit that you might not know everything? And sometimes that you have to dig. Have you, and when you're corrected for a student, don't get mad about, when you're corrected by a student, don't get mad about it. Say, I'm so glad you saw that. Celebrate, let them be, again, it's part of that facilitative piece. And then when you get excited about something, you know that those students are watching you and they want your approval. And when they see you get excited about something, they're going to say, wow, my teacher really likes this. I want to see why that excites my teacher. Maybe that's a hook that'll bring them in. Engage with the content. Okay, that's the emotional. And of course, you know, we're all dealing with social emotional learning right now too, which is very, very important to all of us. All right, make learning visual, more visual, and utilize technology. I am so proud of teachers. I retired from administration 2 years ago. And Christy and I and Kiwanis and Wendy, we've all had these conversations. I am so proud of how teachers as a group have stepped up to the next level. And so, you know, use that technology. Even when we get back to normal, it is going to be there and an expectation to use us. And then help us create something we've learned. I think this is the next step to connect what we've learned in the real world. And then teach us something new in a new way. There again, get away from those drill and kill sheets. There is a place for that. I'm not saying there isn't. But if that's all you're doing, you know, reflect on that. Teach it in a new way. And it might be outside, it might be with music, it may be with art, it may be with speakers. Just teach things in a new way. Okay, Bethany, I've got us good and behind now.
Oh no, I love this. And what I think is fascinating about this kind of connection between what researchers say, you know, the types of engagement are, and how we were able to layer on what students say. I mean, the real users in the classroom. We see that these things really overlap, and we're going to explore these a bit more in our session this afternoon. So we're going to do a quick kind of look in the rearview mirror. You can see our little rearview mirror icon there. And this is just a personal reflection. So just maybe jot it down on a scrap piece of paper, post-it note, because we're going to use this reflection as a springboard into our next activity. So did any of these student responses surprise you? So when you think about these 9 responses that Catherine walked us through, did any of it like, oh, really? That's what a student would have said? Again, this was a national survey of 6th through 12th graders, rural, urban, all sorts of school makeups. And this is what they said motivates them and engages them. So did anything surprise you? Which do you feel is a strength of your own classroom practice? And then what's an area or two that you want to further explore? So I'm going to back it up a slide here and let you look at those 9 things. Were any of them surprising? Which do you feel is a strength of yours? And then what 1 or 2 might you want to learn a little bit more about? Those 9 responses. All right, you keep reflecting for a moment while I introduce us to where we're headed next, which is all the same thing. So you'll be right where you should be. We're going to take this reflection and think about our own personal classroom engagement practices. We're going to continue to explore these 9 responses out of the Just Ask Us survey, national survey. And then we're going to consider the impact of our working definition of engagement on our own personal classroom practices. All right, so our journey continues. And like I said, we're going to continue to explore what students say most engages them. Now, your last reflection question was, which of those might you want to know more about? And we're going to offer you a personal learning path. This is a really neat strategy that you can use to personalize learning. It's something we can talk more about in the future, future rural life sessions, but just wanted to model one for you and let you see that this is where we are giving you some choices, right? As the students said they love choices, we want to give you some choices and let you kind of design a learning path that suits you. So Catherine's going to drop in the chat the link that's highlighted on this slide. And what it is, oh, awesome. So it'll take you to the companion site of the Just Ask Us book, okay? And in essence, you've got different sections that explore each of those 9 responses. So we're going to give you 7 minutes, maybe just shy of 7 minutes, to just explore which of those you want to know more about, or you're just not quite sure maybe what students mean when they say blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to use this learning next in our next activity to think about our own lessons, either some past lessons we've taught or some that we have coming up in the future. Okay, so let me move my little toolbar out of the way here. And you should, when you click on that link that Catherine dropped, does my screen show a website page
Yes.
now? Okay, awesome.
Yes.
So this is what we're going to use as our personal learning path. Wasn't anything fancy. I didn't make this. This is just the companion site for the book. But you can click over here on the left and you'll see those student responses. And some of these have videos that you could kind of watch. Some of them have resources. Some of them have worksheets that you could use with your students. So you take a moment to explore this, whatever makes sense for you in your practice. And we'll come back together in about 7 minutes or so. Maybe, like I said, just a little shy of 7 minutes. May stop us a little early. Feel free to turn your camera off if you work better off camera, like I said I do. But we'll be back in about 6 minutes or so.
No, let me mute.
Let's take about another minute and a half or so. I'll wrap us up at just a smidge early, but just know that you're going to be able to continue to explore this in the next section. So it'll be all right. All right, like I said, we're going to continue to think about these 9 student responses about what engages them the most. And what I'll have us do here is take this learning to our classrooms, okay? So linked here is a Google Doc. And when Catherine drops this link in the chat, it'll prompt you to make a copy. That way it'll be yours and you can make it your own. Or if you prefer, you can see the same guiding questions per se here on the slide. If you prefer to kind of just focus on what's on the slide, that's fine too. But what we want to do is spend the next few moments here thinking about a particular lesson, either one that you just taught or one that's maybe coming up in the next week or so, and ask ourselves some guiding questions, okay? So the first 3 questions are really designed to help you understand what's the intent of your lesson, right? So we're going to do some backwards planning. You think about, what are the knowledge and skills that students need to develop as a part of this lesson? How will you know that they've mastered that content? What are some maybe end of lesson or end of unit tasks that you have in line with your curriculum or that you know are coming up for students? And then based on that, what are the activities that are in line to help your students get there? And then once you really have that in mind, it's time to think about student engagement. Now, if you're looking at the Google Doc sheet, page 2 is where I really want this conversation to go. And here's where we want you all to share out, okay? This will be, in what ways could you think about what students have told us through that national survey or those 9 student responses, and how could you embed one or more of those in your lesson if they're not already present? All right, and so you'll see just like a 3x3 grid that lets you kind of take some notes. And so here's where we'd love to hear from you all. And what we may do is first give you just a little bit of time to think through these first 3 questions, that kind of backwards thinking, planning with regard to your lesson. And then we'll spend some time just sharing out around those 9 responses, what you all are doing in your classrooms that are in line with those 9 student responses, and let you all hear from each other, steal ideas from each other, and so on. So let's take just a few minutes here of some quiet time to think through that first page of that Google Doc, or these first 3 questions. Put your lesson in context, think about what students are going to have to show, how they're going to show mastery of the content, and then what are some activities. And then we'll come back together in about 4 minutes and we'll start talking engagement. Again, feel free to turn your camera off if you work better that way. No worries. But then shortly, we're going to be sharing out. So we want you to join us for that for sure.
Bethany, some of them are having trouble with the Google Doc. I checked it out and it worked.
All right. No, it should have you make a copy, but it says you
Yeah.
don't have access. That's interesting. Okay, that's why we had a backup and we put the questions on the slide. Really, there's nothing in that worksheet that you can't see directly on the slide except just the fancy boxes that I put these questions in, okay? We should also, I'm wondering, Catherine, as folks are thinking, if you can see my screen, I'm on our Rural Live Professional Learning site. Let me drop that. Actually, let me go ahead and shortcut it for you. I'm going to go here to resources, lead teacher collaborative, affinity groups. This is January 20th. And here are all the affinity groups that are running this afternoon. And you can see those same resources. And I'll drop this in the chat and see if anybody has any luck accessing it that way. So ours, I believe, is the second one down here, engagement. And you can see that same activity. But in reality, questions are on the slide if that's just an easier road. It may just be a Google thing. For those of you that maybe are Google school districts and, you know, are kind of in that Google world, it may be a little easier than maybe those that are having to sign in with a Google account.
Jared, did you get to it? Give me a thumbs up, Jared. You're usually pretty good with this. Did you get to it?
Wouldn't let you do it either. Has anybody tried off the recent link I just dropped off the website? Was it any, it was better? Oh, I got a thumbs up from Ashley maybe. Okay. Oh, Christy says yes. Okay, so maybe try, oh, thanks, Hannah. So maybe the
Yeah, I
link.
went to the email that you sent us with this and printed it off and it worked there. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Trista. Hey, this is like a real class, isn't it? Some kids can get it, some can, you know, it's one of those kind of things. It's just par for the course. Thank you all for being flexible. All right, so if you think about that second page, which of the 9 student responses are you motivated to try? What are some things maybe that you're already doing ahead of us thinking about that reflection question? What were some that you noticed maybe in your past lessons or something that you're already thinking forward to? And just to make it easier, I'll back up here so we can see these. There they are. So are any of us finding creative ways to give students choices, for example, or let us work together, or show us you're human too? What are some things
you want us to unmute and talk or put this in the chat box?
Yeah, great question, Trista. I say just unmute and share out that way, unless you prefer chat, and then you can have that choice.
Okay, for me, choices, I think an easy way to do this is in homework, like for ELA. Sometimes we'll assign articles for the students to read and giving them a choice of you can read this one or this one. Like you guys said, usually when you give choices, you'll get more homework response back. So I think homework is a great way to give choices. It's an easy way too, really, kind of low hanging fruit.
It's a great first step, right? Not too heavy of a lift, really, on the
Yes.
teacher's part, right? Oh, Stephanie said choice boards and ELA for word study or vocab. Anybody else around choice? Oh, Hannah, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I watched the little segment on showing us you're human too, and that fit in really well. The lesson that I picked was on Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee. We talk a lot about grief and author's purpose and humanizing, and I really liked how the model teacher said you have to relate it to characters in your own life so that you can make them tangible, and I really like that. So that's something that would be a seamless transition, whether virtual or in person. Right now I'm teaching hybrid, so it's both at the same time. So that would work really well.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out.
At my school, we really like to use Jamboards so that the kids can work together. They love Jamboards. That's like their favorite thing. when can we do that? When can we do that? That's what they ask.
Hey, Stephanie, question about that. I've done that a couple times, and the first time I did it, I actually got the idea from the last meeting we had on here. I didn't even know what Jamboard was on my Google Suite. All that stuff I don't know, I've just been ignoring it because I'm like, ooh, overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I did it, and with a couple of my classes, it went well. And then I had some stinkers who wanted to delete other people's things.
Mhm.
Is there a way for us to like nix that?
You have to go in and change their access to where they're an editor or a viewer after they're finished.
Yeah. That's about all we can do. Yeah.
Cool beans.
One thing, Trista, that helps me with Jamboard, I didn't realize that on your Jamboards, you can make different slides. So if I say everyone has to make their own slide, then there aren't so many sticky notes. So if they make their own slide, we can swipe through. Because my kids pulled the same shenanigans, and then they kept moving the different sticky notes, and it was a hot mess. So that works for me.
Very cool.
Thank
That's a cool
you.
hack, Hannah. Thank you.
You can also, I group them and I make a different slide for group 1, group 2, group 3, and then they can, and I put a different question on each slide, and then they can work that way as well.
Fantastic way to get them working together and also limit the number of folks that are all trying to access that same slide.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We also like Padlet, but Padlet you have to have a subscription to after 3. So it kind of limited what we could do, but they love Padlet too.
As a side note, if Padlet's something that you just really love, reach out to your coach. You may still have some school funds left over that could help with a subscription to that, or maybe something that you want to think about for next year. Yeah, that could be something we want to think about. All
Anthony,
right,
I
just
was
like
thinking
that,
about
we've only got
that.
about 15 minutes left. I want us to continue sharing out, but we're going to do that in a little bit of a different way. Let me now get us back to where we were since I went all the way backwards. So on this third stop of our journey, we're going to consider some additional ways, because actually you all just shared some really wonderful ways to increase engagement. And we're going to transfer our learning, our initial learning about some of these student engagement preferences, those 9 responses, to some real practical needs of just virtual online learning, or like Hannah was saying, hybrid learning, where you kind of got kids going back and forth, or you're trying to manage both. And just again, continue to expand our working definition of engagement. So first, we're going to hit the brakes on this journey, because let's have a reality check. How do we get our kids just to turn their cameras on? Sometimes that we know is something that we're very interested in trying to increase the number of kids with cameras on. And so love this article, very recent article from Edutopia, Strategies to Encourage Students to Turn Their Cameras On. And Catherine's going to drop that in the chat. And then want to give you a couple moments just to kind of skim that yourself. You'll see a section called out for SEL strategies, a section on video conferencing platform tips, and some instructional tips. And then from there, we're going to kind of merge our learning together. We're going to think about what you see in the article through the lens of those 9 student responses. And we're going to continue to talk about very practical strategies for increasing engagement. Okay. All right, so I'll start the timer. We might not take an additional 4 minutes because such rich conversation that you all are having there. I want to get back to it, but we'll get us started. Everybody have access to the article from the chat? Can you give me a thumbs up or a nod? Thank you. All right. All right, I'll jump over top of this timer, but we'll let it run down anyway. And just curious about what stood out to you concerning some of these strategies. Did any of them speak to you? Are you using some of these or a version of these? So let's take a few minutes just to share out with each other.
Well, I stink at this one about getting their cameras turned on. I saw a couple already that I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, I know, I just want to think that what I have to say is so important. They should want their cameras on to listen. But one of them was pass the pen. So you're in your grid and it's like you have a pen and you hold yours up. So the person that's above you has to grab the pen and pass to so they have to be watching the screen. That's like, why can't I think of these things?
That's just fun. I just, I think a kid might just perk up just to see that, like, oh, what? I'm going to like drop my pen or hand it to the side or,
Yes, that was so fun.
That's fun. Anything else stand out to you all? Something you're doing or something that has got you inspired?
There's an app you can add to your Google extension. I don't know about Zoom, but it's like an animal that walks across the screen back and forth. So we have like a class pet. It's a cat. And like, I'm like, you have to have your camera on in order to hold the cat. Like I let him walk across the screen. And then like occasionally I'll say, okay, who's got their hand out? Who wants to hold the cat? And so they will reach up and pet it. And they love that.
Yes. Can you share that, Stephanie, in the chat, or what's the name of it? Or
I'll have to look it up. It was just random. The guy next door that teaches next door was telling me, oh, you've got to see this cat. So I'll get the name of it and send it to you because it is, I mean, they love it. They're like, oh, I want to hold the cat. So I'm like, but you have to have your camera on.
That is so cool. You can, Stephanie, if you want to just reply all to our little pre-session email or something, I think we'll all be there. That'd be awesome. And I love, Hannah, what you said, the app, not the kitty. All right. Anything else stand out as some of these strategies that either just spoke to you or you're doing? Has you reflecting on trying something new?
I've seen a couple of teachers really successfully use the pre-recorded video, and the kids kind of take some ownership with it. I've seen them do it like book reports or just introductions of themselves or what have you been doing. That's a healthy, good thing.
One thing that works really well in my classroom, we play Gimkit, which is sort of a review game. And my students love that. They always have, but it was a little difficult getting used to virtual students plus in person. But they have a version, I don't know, I teach middle school. Do you guys have kids who play Among Us? It's like their favorite thing to do at lunch. Okay. They have a version of it that's called Trust No One. And it's one of a few of them among them have the code to the spaceship research, and you have to guess who it is. But in order to investigate people, you have to earn points. So you have to answer questions correctly. So you would have thought I was giving them all gorgeous Christmas presents. They love playing it to this day. And that's something that really gets them competitive. And I try not to get hung up on the kids who don't turn their camera on. If they will just unmute and participate that way, I'm here for it. So compromise plus a little healthy competition gets them going well for me.
I love that, Hannah. And there are times, one that stood out to me was this idea of like, having camera optional times where it's really not a big deal if you don't have your camera on, and how we can maybe not require it all the time, and maybe it's just some of the time. And then just some of the other SEL components to, knowing that my camera's on and I'm in my home space, and how does that make me feel as a student? So that empathy side. Oh gosh, this alarm's about to go off. All right. But it is a good reminder that just like that, we're down to like 7 minutes. So Catherine, I'm going to hand it over to you as we do a, well, actually, let me, I was going to say, let's do a reflection. But
Anna put in the virtual pets link in the chat.
Oh, very cool.
Okay, but we'll send that back out too.
All right, thank you, Catherine. All right, so we want to make some connections here toward the end between our 9 student responses. So I've got those here at the top of the slide. And then this activity that we want to have you do in the chat, okay? Are any of you familiar with that waterfall strategy, chat strategy? Maybe it's called something different. It's where you have everybody type in the chat, but you don't hit enter until you give the signal. And then it kind of waterfalls through the, all the chats kind of populate in at the same time. Kids love it. I don't, it is my son who's in 7th grade. I heard him the other day talking about how they like to waterfall their chat responses. And he's a 7th grade boy and he thought it was fun. But anyway, so what we're going to have you chat is 2 connections between what students say engages them from the Just Ask Us. That's these 9 responses at the top of the slide, and then an example from the Edutopia article. And we want you to create a chain with your greater than and less than symbols. So I read something recently that sometimes just having kids use different symbols on their keyboard is a strategy to increase engagement. Like they're not used to using those, especially in ELA class, maybe in math. But so we want to create an actual visual of a chain that we're creating in our ideas. So I'm going to give you examples. So for example, give us choices, to me, connected to this idea of encouraging virtual backgrounds and giving students a chance to choose what type of virtual background they want to use. So that's just one example. So see if you can come up with at least 1, hopefully 2 chains, and get them queued up in the chat, but don't hit enter just yet. All right, if you have at least 1, give me a thumbs up. All right, how about let's waterfall in 3, 2, 1. Oh, fun, look at your little chains. All right, so we see some connections. Yeah, let us work together, trying breakout rooms, creating by offering student projects, love it. Show us you're human too. Yeah, start with a personal, entertaining story. Why not have a little fun, right, within your lessons? Yes, pre-recorded video demonstrating is tied to that, creating something with what we've learned. I won't read all of these, but scroll down through there, see what your colleagues said. And I love that you all, humored me as we tried to create these kind of virtual chains with our thinking.
Did you see the mix things up and survey students?
Perfect.
Those student surveys.
Yes, and there's an actual student survey in that personal learning path, that companion website that you might want to try with your students. All right, Catherine, we've got about 3 minutes. You want to prompt them to think about what to put in our closing chat reflection, and then I'll get ready to talk us through some next steps.
Okay, so at the beginning we said 1 to 3 words or phrases that you think about with student engagement. So have you thought of anything else? Have you pushed past anything? Have you heard any words or phrases that might help explain your understanding now or your concept of this? Use chat, give us some words, and be surprised, you may see it in our second session, some of your all's thoughts.
Exactly. What new learning can you add to what you started today's session with? All righty. As you're thinking through that, give you just a minute to do that. Actually, I don't want to make you do too many things at one time. Yeah, let's have a little fun, like some compromise. Embrace fun as an essential component. Several of you noticed that.
Oh, the movement came up, more choices, being creative.
So yes, like Catherine said, we're going to next time in kind of part 2 of this conversation on engagement, we're going to dig deeper into more of these ideas. All right, so next time back on the slide here, we have a request, a little bridge to practice Padlet, if you will. Now, we know that as your role as lead teacher, it's such a special role as part of the way the grant's designed. I mean, we know we've got the role of the administrator, you've got that real life coach, but you're the teacher, the leader that's kind of out there modeling for other folks in your buildings, the one that some folks like will come to and ask for advice. So we know that puts you in a special place. And in fact, we value it so much that, you know, through the grant, we're able to compensate you for that, that role. So we ask to do just a little bit of homework, if you will, some home fun between this session and next. Hopefully it won't take you more than maybe 10 minutes, okay? And we want to show you just real quickly, ask you on a Padlet to reflect on 2 recent student activities that you've done, and then complete the reflection. And I'm going to swap over here to the Padlet and just let you see that in pink here, there are some directions. So I won't read that to you word for word, but each person we hope will have 2 separate Padlet posts. So you'll have one reflection for one activity and another reflection for your second activity. And it's mostly like who participated and how often in this activity and how do you know? And then what was the expected depth of thinking you wanted students to engage in within this activity? And you can see I came up with like a little example just to kind of show you how I might think about it. Feel free to make it your own though. We ask that between this session and the next one that you post 2 reflections on the Padlet. So speaking of next, we've done November 18th. We've been here for January 20th. Next time is February 10th, and that'll be the second of our 2 affinity group sessions for the round 1 of affinity groups. Then a reminder that we're back with our partners, Leading Edge Learning. And I know it looks funny with that capital ED, but that's how they do it. Leading Edge Learning will be with them on February 24th. So stay tuned for more information about that. And then March and April, we'll have a second round of affinity groups. So you'll pick a new topic to dig into, and you'll do similar to what we're doing here, kind of a part 1, part 2. All right, any questions about the Padlet? I know we've held you over. We've got started just a smidge late.
I can, Bethany, I'll send them the Padlet a link in a follow-up email too.
Yeah, and we'll have it also on that website resource.
Yeah.
You know, the slides will be posted. You'll be able to click on any of the links that are hyperlinked, like what you see here. So lots of ways. And if for some reason you're like, Bethany, I don't know where I put that, just email me or Catherine and we'll send it to you. Not a big deal. All right, Catherine's going to drop a survey in the chat. And while she's doing that, just wanted to highlight some resources that are at the end of this session. These are all the resources that we talked through today. And also you'll note our contact information is here as well. All right, the survey just takes a moment. If you don't care to do that for us.
Bethany?
Yeah.
I'm seeing the link.
You see it? You want me to drop it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Don't mind at all. Wink. All right, there you go.
Okay.
We want to thank everybody. Again, we appreciate how engaged you all were. Wink, wink. And look forward to seeing you in a month's time. Again, if you have any questions between now and then, please don't hesitate to reach out. Really, it's not.
Just reach out to us and we'll be glad to follow up. And